All right. Hi, Sierra. It's Nick here, and we got our weekly 15 minutes with. And this week we got Tom Barnes. Some of you may know Tom from the Monday night discussion group that happens in the Little House or in the discussion group that happens after the first service. And so, Tom, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Nick, for having me.
Yeah. So, right away here, just everyone has a unique story that brought them here. What brought you to Tahoe?
I was doing a rewrite on a TV script, and I used my aunt and uncle's cabin up here, and then I ended up buying it from them, and I've been here ever since. It's been 43 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
43 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get tired of it?
Never. It's there's so many exciting things to do. You just have to keep, doing fishing, sailing, rowing, biking, there's so much, and it's fabulous. The skiing in the winter is amazing. I do backcountry skiing and telemarking, and it's just it's a fabulous place, and you learn new places, you meet new people. There's constant growth and excitement here. So
Yeah,
cool.
that is true. You're right. There are constantly new people in and out of the town, the community, and I think that's one of the things for me in interacting with you is your stories about the outdoors and what you do is so enjoyable for me to listen to. So I know we could get into that another time, but one of the things you do enjoy doing, not probably outside, but is you read. What book would you want people here at the church to read if they could read one book?
Timothy Keller's Reason for God. We've done it a couple of times. Dan Wilvers and I on Monday night discussion group. We've done it twice now, so we've done it, just in depth, and it's just a fantastic experience for anybody that's read it and then opens up those ideas that Tim is so good about portraying. And so it's just a cool book, and we've, about twice a decade is good. I think we should keep doing it, for as long as we can. So
yeah, that's
it never gets old, and you can read it, dozens of times and find new stuff in there. So we've had a lot of fun with it. Let's put it that way.
So one of the things that I don't know if everyone knows, but Tom has been a coach for a lot of different sports, and from team sports to one-on-one. And so I'm really curious, Tom, from your experience as a coach, how has that shaped your understanding of following Jesus?
Well, what I wrote to you is you can't learn the game of tennis in an hour or a day. And I give you the example of one-to-one learners, which is a description of people who learn something in the same time it takes to teach the material. That's a very, very rare thing. There are about 1 in 10,000 people who can actually do that. And I was lucky enough over 50 years of teaching to actually encounter 2 of those, people that you just show or say something to, and they immediately get everything that you tell them to do.
Yeah.
If you can be precise in explaining something to somebody, and that requires, over a period of time to manage a bite of material. So as a teacher, you have to know by asking questions and relating to a person how they receive information.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, you yourself, as well as helping your student to manage their expectations and approximate and evaluate and help them to find what it is that they want to learn and reduce it to a place where they can actually learn something at their speed and to accomplish something that they wanted to begin with. So it's a process, and that does come in handy with uh, the Bible or teaching of anything. Is if somebody's interested in a certain kind of writing, certain kind of story, it's why I think Jesus was so good at telling parables, because he figured out that those were storytelling, that he could embed a moral or different kinds of learning, within a story that was simpler for people to understand. And I think you can do that across the board, in any discipline.
I'm really curious to hear your answer. If you could have coffee with one person from history, who would that be, and what would you want to ask them?
Um, what I wrote down here about that was in the context of this discussion, Jesus, rises to the head of the class. I mean, there's plenty of people in history that I would love to
Yeah.
hang with. I'd love to spend time with Abraham Lincoln. I'd love to spend time with Leonardo da Vinci,
Oh.
or John Kennedy. There's just there Arthur Schlesinger. There's tons of people and artists that have a ton of questions for. But Jesus, knows everything and knows everyone. So I would love to spend time with him. And one of the things that I always ask about, or I'm interested with Jesus, is I'd love to explore his sense of humor, and what he thought was funny or is funny. I'd ask him to tell me some funny stories. We'd have tea or coffee, and that would take probably a few hundred years. And just doing that, and I'd die several times laughing, and he'd have to resuscitate me, and we'd have to do it all over again. Anyway, what better way to live than laugh and laugh until you die and do it over and over. So.
And laughing with Jesus, that's pretty good.
Well, people don't usually associate him that way. I mean, you see these pictures every once in a while with Jesus laughing, but I never heard it really described in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I don't often hear that. You hear somebody like David, playing his lute or whatever he played, and singing and doing these psalms, which are supposed to be songs. And I love the way, even the story that I'm writing now, how gospel music has so many more emotions in it, that simulate and assimilate laughter and joy, as well as pathos and direness. So I love all of the full range and scope of emotions, and we don't often get to see how that fleshes out in Jesus, especially the idea of a sense of humor. And there is humor in life, and I love it. And I love writers or comedians that can make me laugh about my, bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that he's the guy that created all this. So
that lends itself well to just a part of your story that I would love for people to hear more about. But what is your journey of faith? What does that look like, especially in your time here in Tahoe? Sounds like there was a few things that kind of really were pivotal moments for you in coming to know Jesus.
I had a client, Janice Levesque, and her husband, Steve, was a doctor as well up here, and he died in a climbing accident down in Bishop, California. And Dan Wilvers did the ceremony for him, and I came out of respect to Janice, who had been a tennis client for a number of years, and the house was completely filled. There was not a place to stand or sit. And the thing that I was amazed with was how Dan was so happy for Steve. I couldn't assimilate that. It just didn't make sense to me. But I think that there were enough people in the crowd of our church and people in the community who were just stricken with how this young man with very young children,
Mm.
a young wife, could die, and doing athletics, and uh, it just didn't make sense to a lot of people, and I think that's why they were, coming to a place where they could, be and try to have it explained. But the way that Dan explained it, because of the knowledge of Steve and Janice's faith, was that he was happy that Steve was with Jesus, and that did not make sense to me. And I reached out to Dan to explain it to me, and he and I became fast friends almost immediately. And even though he'd known of me because he was doing work over at Tahoe Beach and Ski while I was teaching, and he always thought that, wow, he has such a wonderful life. He's always laughing and having fun out on the tennis court. He didn't realize that I was out there for 14 or 16 hours a day on 120-degree court, frying my bones. And we had a fun time, and it just, has been full bore ahead, basically ever after. So it changed me. It allowed me to use every skill that I had learned from writing or coaching to, address learning of the Bible, and in a way that I had just no knowledge or even suspicion of. And it was just, it's been a wonderful adventure to be able to apply everything towards learning. And I think you learn more by teaching because you have to expose yourself to questions and work. And to be able to do that has been just a magnificent adventure. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how
Cool.
I feel about it.
Yeah, I know. From just many conversations that you and I have had over the years, hearing about your adventures in the backcountry, your adventures in Tahoe, and your adventure in faith. These are things that I think for me are very captivating in your story, and that have been inspiring for me in thinking through how God works, and just that there's something really, really special in the way that God has worked through you with your different experiences and talents, and has used that to allow you to not just know Him, but to get to share that with others. And it's so encouraging for me when we get to talk and I get to hear these things, because you're a wealth of knowledge and stories, and I enjoy that a lot. So thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah. How can we pray for you?
Well, my stock answer to you is that I'm stuck in those first two sections of Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 13, where he says love is patient and love is kind. And there's about eight or 10 more, and I always get stuck every single day, all day long, in those first two. And I need patience, and I need kindness. I need to focus on that continually. And if you can pray with me in that regard, and maybe find yourself reading Paul in the course of it, then that's something that I couldn't go wrong in having people pray for me in that regard.